The wind howled like a wounded animal through the Colorado mountains, driving sheets of snow against the weathered logs of Owen McRae's cabin. He sat by the dying fire, nursing his third whiskey of the evening, when the knock came, 3 sharp raps that cut through the storm's fury like gunshots. Owen froze, glass halfway to his lips. Nobody came up here. Nobody who knew better. Anyway, the trail had been impassable for 2 days, and the nearest town was 15 miles down the mountain. He set down his glass and reached for the Winchester propped against the wall. The knocking came again, more desperate this time. "Who's there?" he called out, not moving from his chair. A voice answered, female, barely audible above the wind. Please help me." Owen cursed under his breath. He'd come to these mountains to escape people, not save them, but even he couldn't leave someone to freeze to death on his doorstep. He unbarred the door and yanked it open, rifle at the ready. A woman stood there, or what was left of one. Snow clung to her dark hair and threadbare cloak. Her face was pale as death, lips blue with cold. She swayed on her feet, one hand braced against the doorframe. I'm your bride," she said, and collapsed. Owen caught her before she hit the floor, the rifle clattering aside. She weighed next to nothing, just bones and wet fabric. He kicked the door shut and carried her to the fire, his mind racing. Bride? He hadn't ordered any bride, hadn't written to anyone in years, hadn't even been to town since September. He laid her on the bearskin rug and built up the fire, adding precious logs he'd been rationing. In the flickering light, he could see her better, young, maybe 25, with delicate features marred by exhaustion and cold. Her dress was city-made but worn thin. Her boots split at the seams. Whoever she was, she'd traveled hard to get here. Owen fetched blankets from the chest, wrapping them around her. Her eyes fluttered open, brown, like Sarah's had been. The comparison hit him like a fist to the gut, and he turned away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He poured coffee from the pot on the hearth, added a generous splash of whiskey. "Here, drink this." She struggled to sit up, accepting the cup with trembling hands. "You're Owen McRae?" "I am. And you're mistaken about being my bride. I didn't send for anyone." She fumbled in her cloak, producing a water-stained envelope. "But the letter, the marriage certificate." Owen took the papers, squinting at them in the firelight. His name was there, sure enough, but the handwriting wasn't his. Someone had played a cruel joke, on her or on him. He couldn't tell which. "This isn't my writing," he said flatly. "Someone's made a fool of you, Miss—" Her face crumpled. No, that can't be. I traveled so far. I have nowhere else." She broke off, coughing violently. Owen watched her, torn between pity and suspicion. Could be a trick, though he couldn't imagine what anyone would gain by it. He had nothing worth stealing except the cabin itself, and nobody was fool enough to want that. "What's your name?" he asked when her coughing subsided. Clara Whitlow." She met his eyes, and he saw fear there, raw and desperate. "Please, Mr. McRae, I know this is strange, but I have nowhere else to go. The storm. I can't go back out there." He glanced at the window. Snow was piling against the glass, the wind rattling the panes. She was right about that much. Nobody was going anywhere tonight. "You can stay until the storm passes," he said grudgingly. "There's a room off the kitchen. It's not much, but it's warm." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you. I'll earn my keep. I promise. I can cook, clean, mend." "I didn't ask for any of that." The words came out harsher than he intended. "Just rest. We'll sort this out when the weather clears." He helped her to her feet, noting how she favored her left side. Injured, maybe, or just exhausted. The small room off the kitchen had been Sarah's sewing room once. Now it held only a narrow cot and a trunk of things he couldn't bear to throw away. Clara sank onto the cot with a sigh. "You're very kind, Mr. McRae." "I'm not kind," he said. "I just don't want a corpse on my doorstep." He left her there, closing the door firmly behind him. Back by the fire, he picked up his whiskey and stared into the flames. A bride. After all these years of solitude, someone had sent him a bride. The cruelty of it made him want to laugh or break something. The photographs on the mantel seemed to watch him accusingly. Sarah in her wedding dress. Little James on his first birthday. His only birthday. Owen turned the frames face down, a ritual he performed every night but which felt heavier tonight with a stranger in the house. He could hear Clara moving around in the little room, the cot creaking as she settled. Soon, silence fell, broken only by the storm and the pop of burning wood. Owen refilled his glass and tried not to think about brown eyes and promises of cooking and mending, of a life that might have been. Morning came gray and bitter. The storm had blown itself out, leaving 2 feet of fresh snow and air sharp enough to cut. Owen rose before dawn, as was his habit, and found Clara already awake, standing by the stove in her damp dress. "I thought I'd make breakfast," she said hesitantly. "If that's all right." He wanted to tell her no, to maintain the boundaries he'd set, but the smell of biscuits, baking, and coffee brewing was already filling the kitchen, and his stomach betrayed him with a growl. "Suit yourself," he muttered, heading for the door. "I need to check the animals." The barn was a welcome escape. He fed the horses and the stubborn old mule, checked the chicken coop for eggs. The familiar routine settled his nerves, gave him time to think. What was he going to do with her? The pass wouldn't be clear for days, maybe weeks if another storm hit, and even when it cleared, where would she go? When he returned to the cabin, she'd set the table for 2. Biscuits, fried eggs, even gravy made from last night's leftover grease. It had been 3 years since anyone had cooked for him. The domesticity of it made his chest tight. "This is too much," he said, but sat down anyway. "It's the least I can do." She poured his coffee, then retreated to the far end of the table. "May I ask, have you lived here long?" "Long enough." She took the hint and ate in silence. Owen studied her over his cup. In daylight, he could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. There was a story there, one that probably started long before someone forged that letter. "Who are you running from?" he asked suddenly. She stiffened. "I'm not running from anyone." "Lady turns up at my door in a blizzard, claiming to be a bride I didn't send for. No proper clothes or provisions. You're running from something." Clara set down her fork carefully. "Does it matter? You said I could stay until the storm passes. I'm not asking for more than that." Her quiet dignity shamed him. What right did he have to pry into her secrets? He had enough of his own. "Fair enough," he said. "But if trouble comes looking for you, I need to know about it." "It won't." She met his eyes squarely. "I made sure of that." Something in her voice, a hardness beneath the fear, made him believe her. He finished his breakfast in silence, then pushed back from the table. "I've got work to do. There's flour in the barrel, salt pork in the larder. Make yourself useful if you want. Or rest. Makes no difference to me." He spent the day splitting wood and mending harnesses. Anything to stay out of the cabin. But when evening came, he found himself looking forward to going inside. The windows glowed with lamplight. Smoke curled from the chimney. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like home again. Clara had been busy. The cabin was cleaner than it had been in months. The floors swept, the dishes washed and put away. She'd even mended the torn curtain over the kitchen window. A pot of stew bubbled on the stove, filling the air with the scent of herbs he'd forgotten he had. "I hope you don't mind," she said, barely glancing up from her sewing. "I found some wild onions in your root cellar." Owen hung up his coat, unsettled by the changes. "It's fine." They ate by the fire again, the silence more comfortable this time. Clara hummed softly as she worked on his torn shirt, a melody that tugged at something deep in his chest. When she noticed him watching, she fell quiet. "Don't stop," he said roughly. "It's been a while since there was music here." She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her almost beautiful. She took up the tune again, and Owen leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. For a dangerous moment, he let himself imagine this was real, that she was really his bride, that the empty years hadn't happened, that a man could start over at 35 with nothing but regrets to his name. The fantasy shattered when she spoke. "Your family," she said carefully. "The photographs." Owen's eyes snapped open. The pictures were still face down where he'd left them. "What about them?" "Nothing. I understand loss. Mr. McRae, I won't pry." He should have left it there, but something about her quiet sympathy loosened his tongue. "Fever took them 3 years ago this winter. My wife, my boy. I was in town when it started. Didn't get back in time to—" He stopped, swallowing hard. This was their place. I just keep it standing. Clara's hands stilled on the sewing. "I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't know them." "I know you," she said softly. "That's enough." The words hung between them, too intimate for strangers. Owen stood abruptly, needing distance. "Storm might last another day or two. After that, we'll figure out how to get you back to town." "Of course," she said, but he heard the fear creep back into her voice. "Mr. McRae, what if I could pay for passage somewhere else? Anywhere but back." He turned to look at her. "You in some kind of trouble with the law?" "No, nothing like that." She set aside the sewing, clasping her hands tightly. "I was married in Kansas to a man who—" She stopped, choosing her words carefully. "It wasn't a good marriage. I left, that's all." Owen knew there was more to it. The haunted look in her eyes spoke of violence. Maybe worse, but he also knew about running from ghosts. "Get some sleep," he said. "We'll talk about it when the weather clears." He left her by the fire and retreated to his room, barring the door out of habit more than fear. Through the thin walls, he could hear her moving around, banking the fire, washing the dishes. Normal sounds, domestic sounds that made the cabin feel alive again. Owen lay on his bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. A bride. Someone had sent him a bride. The question was why, and what he was going to do about it. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows like skeletal fingers. Another storm coming. Clara Whitlow would be staying longer than either of them had planned. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about brown eyes and gentle hands, about the way she'd said his name like it meant something. He'd buried his heart with Sarah and James. He had no business digging it up now, no matter how sweetly a stranger sang by his fire. But when sleep finally came, he dreamed of spring. The morning routine became their unspoken agreement. Owen would rise before dawn, tend to the animals, and return to find breakfast waiting. Clara moved through the cabin like a ghost, quiet and efficient, careful not to disturb more than necessary. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and the storm showed no signs of breaking. Owen tracked snow into the kitchen, stamping his boots by the door. Clara looked up from kneading bread dough, flour dusting her hands and apron, one of Sarah's aprons. He noticed with a pang. "The horses are restless," he said. "This weather's got them spooked. Or maybe they sense something else," Clara suggested, her hands never pausing in their work. "Animals know things we don't." He grunted noncommittally and poured himself coffee. The domesticity of the scene unsettled him. Too familiar. Too much like before. He'd found her studying the photographs yesterday, the ones he'd turned face down. She'd quickly moved away, but not before he'd seen the longing in her eyes. "I need to check the trap lines today," he announced. "Storm or no storm." Clara's hands stilled. "In this weather? That seems dangerous." "Meat won't walk into the cabin on its own." "Then I'll come with you." The offer surprised them both. Owen set down his cup carefully. "You don't know these mountains. You'd be more hindrance than help. I can learn." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm stronger than I look. Mr. McRae, I've survived worse than a little snow." Something in her tone made him reconsider. Maybe it would be good to test her mettle, see what kind of woman had really shown up at his door. Fine, but you do exactly as I say. When I say it, these mountains don't forgive mistakes. Clara nodded, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. I'll need warmer clothes. Owen hesitated, then gestured to the trunk in the corner. There might be something in there that fits. He left her to it, busying himself with preparing the gear. When she emerged from the back room, his breath caught. She wore Sarah's old wool coat and riding skirt, a thick shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The clothes hung loose on her smaller frame, but she'd pinned them to fit well enough. Will these do? She asked uncertainly. Owen had to clear his throat twice before answering. They'll do. They set out into the white wilderness, Owen leading the way through paths only he could see. Clara struggled at first, stumbling through the deep snow, but she kept up without complaint. He found himself slowing his pace, choosing easier routes without acknowledging why. The first trap was empty, sprung by the wind. The second held a rabbit, frozen stiff. Owen reset the traps while Clara watched, memorizing his movements. How long have you trapped these mountains? She asked. My whole life, more or less. My PA brought me up here when I was barely walking. Said a man needs to know how to feed himself without depending on others. Wise words. She pulled the shawl tighter against the wind. My father was a shopkeeper. The only thing he taught me was how to make change and smile at customers even when they were cruel. Owen glanced at her, noting the bitter edge to her voice. That why you answered a marriage advertisement? To get away from shop life? Clara's laugh was humorless. Something like that. They moved on to the next trap line. Following the ridge, the snow had stopped falling, but the wind still cut like a blade. Owen noticed Clara favoring her left side more heavily, the same tell he'd seen that first night. You're hurt, he said. It wasn't a question. Old injury. The cold makes it ache. How old? She didn't answer immediately, concentrating on navigating a fallen log. 6 weeks, maybe 7. It's mostly healed. What happened? I fell, she said simply, but her hand moved unconsciously to her ribs. Down some stairs. Owen knew the sound of a lie, but he also knew the look in her eyes, the same look he'd seen in wounded animals, wary and desperate. Someone had pushed her down those stairs. Someone she'd called husband. They reached the high meadow where Owen had his best trap line. The wind was quieter here, blocked by a stand of pines. Clara sank onto a fallen log, breathing hard. You did well, he admitted. Most would have turned back by now. I told you, I'm stronger than I look. She studied him with those dark eyes. You're different out here, more alive. The observation discomforted him. This is where I belong. That cabin's just where I sleep. No, she said softly. That cabin's where you're slowly dying. The words hit him like a physical blow. You don't know anything about it. I know grief, Mr. McRae. I know what it does to a person when they lock themselves away with it. She stood, swaying slightly. I know, because I almost... She never finished. Her foot slipped on hidden ice, and she went down hard, crying out in pain. Owen caught her before she hit the ground completely, but the damage was done. She clutched her left side, face white with agony. Let me see, he demanded, kneeling beside her in the snow. It's nothing. I just need... She tried to stand and gasped, nearly fainting. Owen didn't ask permission. He unbuttoned her coat, felt gently along her ribs through the wool dress. She hissed when he found the spot, not freshly broken, but badly bruised and possibly cracked, the kind of injury that came from boots, not stairs. Who did this to you? Clara met his eyes, tears streaming down her face from pain and cold. Does it matter? He's hundreds of miles away. It matters. She shook her head stubbornly. Please, can we just go back? Owen helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. The return journey took twice as long, Clara leaning heavily against him, both of them fighting through the deepening drifts. By the time they reached the cabin, she was barely conscious. He carried her inside, laying her carefully on his own bed, closer to the main fireplace. She protested weakly as he unlaced her boots. removed the wet outer clothes. "Rest," he ordered. "I'll make something for the pain." He brewed willow bark tea, added a generous splash of whiskey. Clara drank it without argument, already half asleep. Owen sat beside the bed, watching her breathe, noting the old bruises he could now see on her wrists. The healing cut on her lip he'd mistaken for cold damage. The story was writing itself in his mind. A bad marriage, violent husband, desperate escape. The forged letter made sense now. She'd needed a destination, a reason to be traveling alone. Some criminal in Kansas was probably laughing at having sent a beaten woman to a hermit in the mountains. Clara murmured in her sleep, one hand reaching out. Without thinking, Owen took it, feeling the calluses from work, the delicate bones beneath. She quieted at his touch, fingers curling around his. He should have pulled away, should have maintained the distance that kept him safe. Instead, he sat there as afternoon faded to evening, holding a stranger's hand and remembering what it felt like to protect someone who needed it. When she woke, the cabin was dark, except for firelight. Owen had moved to the chair beside the bed, still within reach. Clara blinked at him, disoriented. "How do you feel?" "Sore, foolish." She tried to sit up, winced. "I'm sorry. I've been nothing but trouble since I arrived. Stop apologizing." He helped her sit, propping pillows behind her. "You need food. When's the last time you ate properly?" She had to think about it. "Before I left Kansas, maybe 4 days ago, I had some bread on the train." Owen bit back a curse. No wonder she'd collapsed. Exhaustion, injury, and hunger. He headed for the kitchen, returning with stew and bread. Clara ate slowly, savoring each bite. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything. For not throwing me out that first night. You'd have died. Some men wouldn't have cared." Owen studied her face in the firelight. "Your husband. He did more than push you downstairs." "Didn't he?" Clara's hand trembled as she set down the spoon. "Joseph Hartley is a respected grain merchant in Topeka. He has friends, influence. When I tried to leave the first time, he had me brought back, said a wife's place was with her husband, no matter what. The law says he owns me," she interrupted bitterly. "Like I'm a horse or a piece of furniture. When I finally ran, I knew I could never go back, never use my real name again. Clara Whitlow isn't real." She managed a weak smile. "It is now." Owen absorbed this information, anger building in his chest. Not at her, at a world that would trap a woman with a man who'd beat her. Then blame her for running. "You're safe here," he said roughly. "Long as you need to be. The storm will clear eventually. You'll want your solitude back." "Maybe." He stood, suddenly restless. "Or maybe I've had enough solitude for one lifetime." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Clara watched him pace, something shifting in her expression. "Owen," she said, the first time she'd used his given name. "I didn't just run. When I left, I took something of his money, enough to start over somewhere far away. That makes me a thief in the law's eyes." "Good," he said flatly. "Man beats his wife. He deserves worse than losing some money." "You don't think less of me?" Owen turned to face her. "I think you're the bravest damn fool I've ever met, coming to these mountains alone in winter. But no, I don't think less of you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so scared when I got off that wagon and saw this place, so sure I'd made another terrible mistake. And now? She wiped her eyes, attempted a smile. "Now I'm thinking maybe God has a sense of humor after all, sending me to the one man in Colorado who'd understand running from ghosts." Owen felt something crack inside his chest, a wall he'd built stone by stone over 3 years. "Get some rest. I'll sleep by the kitchen fire tonight. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. "Clara, that money you took, is it enough to get you somewhere safe? California, maybe, or Oregon?" She nodded slowly. "More than enough. Good. When spring comes, I'll take you down to Denver myself. Make sure you get on the right train. And if I didn't want to go?" The question stopped him cold. He didn't turn around, couldn't risk looking at her. Then you'd be a bigger fool than I thought. He left before she could respond, settling himself by the kitchen fire with a blanket and his ghosts. But for the first time in 3 years, the ghosts felt quieter, overshadowed by the living woman in his bed. Through the wall, he could hear her moving, settling in for sleep, when she started humming that same melody, a lullaby. He realized now. Owen closed his eyes and let himself listen, let himself imagine, just for tonight, that he deserved a second chance at something besides survival. Tomorrow would bring its own problems. The storm would clear, decisions would need making. But tonight, Clara Whitlow, or whoever she really was safe under his roof, and that was enough. The fire crackled, the wind howled, and somewhere between memory and possibility, Owen McRae began to thaw. Spring came slowly to the mountains, fighting winter for every inch of ground. The snow retreated grudgingly, revealing patches of brown earth and brave green shoots. Owen worked from dawn to dusk, repairing winter's damage to the cabin and outbuildings. Clara worked alongside him, no longer a guest, but something harder to define. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the weeks. She'd taken over the household completely, cooking, mending, tending the vegetable garden she'd insisted on starting. Owen had expanded the chicken coop and built a proper shelter for the goats they'd traded for in town. Neither spoke of her leaving anymore. "We need more nails," Clara announced, examining the half-built addition to the storage shed. "And flour. I'm down to the last barrel." Owen wiped sweat from his brow, considering, "I'll go to town tomorrow. Make a list of what you need." "I could come with you." The suggestion hung between them. She hadn't left the mountains since arriving 3 months ago. Owen understood her fear. Every trip to town risked someone recognizing her, asking questions. "Best you stay here," he said finally. "Keep the fire going." Clara nodded, but he caught the flash of disappointment in her eyes. She was tired of hiding, tired of looking over her shoulder. He knew the feeling well. That evening, they sat on the newly repaired porch, watching the sunset paint the peaks orange and gold. Clara had brought out her sewing, working on a shirt she'd cut from cloth they'd traded eggs for. Owen whittled a piece of pine, shaping it into something that might become a spoon. "Tell me about her," Clara said suddenly. "Sarah." Owen's hand stilled. They'd danced around the subject for months, neither willing to breach that particular wall. "Why?" "Because she was part of you. Because pretending she didn't exist dishonors her memory." Clara kept her eyes on her sewing. "And because I think you need to talk about her." Owen set down the wood, looking out at the mountains. "She was nothing like you," he said finally. "Quiet, timid, scared of her own shadow sometimes. Her father married her off to me when she was barely 17. Thought I'd be a good provider. Were you? I tried. Built this place for her. Made it as comfortable as I could. She never complained, but..." He paused, searching for words. "She wasn't made for this life. Too gentle. The isolation wore on her, though she'd never admit it." Clara's needle moved steadily through the fabric. "She loved you, though. In her way. Yes, and I loved her. But it was a quiet love, born of duty and proximity more than passion." Owen picked up the wood again, needing something to do with his hands. When James came along, she finally seemed happy, had something to pour all that bottled-up affection into. "How old was he when—" "2, just turned 2. The words came out rough. "Fever hit fast. I rode for the doctor, but by the time we got back," he shook his head, "Sarah was already burning up. Held on 2 more days. Delirious most of it. James went first. She followed 6 hours later." Clara set aside her sewing and moved closer, not touching but near enough that he could feel her warmth. "I'm sorry. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done. Scarlet fever, he thought. Said I was lucky I didn't catch it too." Owen laughed bitterly. "Lucky." They sat in silence as darkness crept across the valley. Finally, Clara spoke again. "My baby would have been 2 this spring." Owen turned to look at her, seeing fresh pain in her eyes. I lost it early, she continued, voice steady but soft. After one of Joseph's rages, the doctor said I might not be able to carry another, that there was too much damage. She wrapped her arms around herself. That's when I knew I had to leave. He'd never let me go willingly, but without a child to bind us. Clara. Owen reached out, hesitated, then laid his hand over hers. Any man who'd hurt a woman carrying his child isn't worth mourning. I don't mourn him. I mourn what could have been. A different life, different choices. She turned her hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. Though I suppose if I'd made different choices, I wouldn't be here. And that would be a bad thing. She smiled, the expression transforming her face in the twilight. Ask me in a year. The promise implicit in those words made Owen's heart race. A year. She was thinking in terms of seasons, of permanence. He squeezed her hand gently, unable to voice what that meant to him. The next morning, he set off for town with a list of supplies and a head full of thoughts. The trail was muddy but passable. Spring runoff turning creeks into rivers. He made good time, reaching the settlement by midday. McBride's general store was busy with ranchers stocking up after the long winter. Owen nodded to a few familiar faces but kept to himself, gathering Clara's requested items along with extras. Real coffee, white sugar, a length of blue calico that matched her eyes. Been a while, McRae, old McBride said, tallying the order. Heard you had some excitement up your way this winter. Owen tensed. What kind of excitement? Stage driver said he dropped a woman at your trail back in January, during that big storm. McBride's eyes glinted with curiosity. Figured she must have moved on by now. My cousin. Owen lied smoothly. From back east, came to help out for a while. Cousin, eh? McBride clearly didn't believe it, but wasn't rude enough to push. Well, you tell your cousin she's welcome in town any time. Place could use more women folk. Owen paid and loaded his supplies, eager to leave, but as he headed for his horse, a commotion near the stage office caught his attention. A well-dressed man was arguing with the depot manager, his voice carrying clearly. Definitely came through here. Dark hair, about this tall, calling herself Clara something. I've got papers proving she's my property. Owen's blood ran cold. He turned away, pulling his hat low, but not before catching sight of the man. Middle-aged, prosperous-looking, with a soft look of someone who paid others to do his dirty work. Joseph Hartley. Had to be. Owen mounted his horse and rode out slowly, fighting the urge to gallop, once clear of town. He pushed the animal hard, needing to reach Clara before what? Hartley didn't know where she was, yet. The sun was setting when he crested the final ridge. The cabin looked peaceful, smoke rising from the chimney, but Owen's heart didn't calm until he saw Clara emerge, shading her eyes against the light. You're back early, she called, then saw his expression. What's wrong? He dismounted, grabbing her arms. Pack your things. We're leaving. Owen, what? He's here, in town, looking for you. The color drained from her face. Joseph. But how? Doesn't matter. We need to go. He started for the cabin, but Clara didn't move. No. Owen turned back, disbelieving. Clara, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She lifted her chin, and he saw steel in her spine he'd only glimpsed before. I've been running for months. I'm tired of it. He has legal papers. The law? The law already failed me once. She walked past him into the cabin, but instead of packing, she began preparing dinner. I'm not leaving. Owen, this is my home now. Clara, be reasonable. She whirled on him, eyes blazing. Reasonable? I've been reasonable my whole life. Reasonable when my father sold me to the highest bidder. Reasonable when my husband beat me. Reasonable when I lost my baby. Her voice cracked. I'm done being reasonable. Owen caught her as she swayed, the fight going out of her as quickly as it had come. I can't lose this too, she whispered against his chest. I can't lose you. The words broke something in him. He pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair. "You won't, I promise." She looked up at him, tears streaming. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I keep my promises." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears. "We'll face this together. If you want to stay and fight, then we fight." Clara rose on her toes, and their lips met, desperate, hungry. 3 months of careful distance exploding into need. Owen backed her against the wall, hands roaming her sides, careful of old injuries. She made a soft sound that nearly undid him. "Clara," he breathed against her mouth. "We should—" "No more should," she interrupted, pulling him back down. "No more waiting. If Joseph's coming, if we only have tonight, we have more than tonight." He forced himself to step back, breathing hard. "But when I take you to bed, it won't be because we're scared. It'll be because we choose it, clear-headed and sure." Clara stared at him, chest heaving, then slowly nodded. "You're right. Of course you're right." She smoothed her skirts with shaking hands. "I should finish dinner." They ate quietly, both aware of how the air had changed between them. Every accidental touch sparked, every glance held weight. When Clara rose to clear the table, Owen caught her hand. "Stay inside tomorrow. Bar the door when I leave. I'll handle the chores." "You think he'll come? If he's smart, he'll hire guides, ask around. Someone might remember seeing you that night." Owen squeezed her fingers. "But this is my land. Nobody sets foot on it without my say." Clara nodded, then surprised him by kissing his forehead softly. "Thank you for everything." That night, Owen cleaned his rifles, loaded extra ammunition, sharpened his knives. Through the wall, he could hear Clara moving restlessly, unable to sleep. He wanted to go to her, hold her until the fear passed, but he stayed by his weapons. If Hartley came, Owen would be ready. But another part of him, a part growing stronger each day, hoped the man would come. It would be good to have a target for the rage that had been building since he'd seen those old bruises. Heard her story. Owen McRae had failed to save his first family. He wouldn't fail again. Dawn came without incident, but Owen knew it was just the beginning. Somewhere down the mountain, a man was hunting what he considered his property. What he didn't know was that Clara had found more than refuge in these mountains. She'd found someone willing to fight for her, and Owen had learned to fight dirty from the mountains themselves. Let him come, Owen thought, checking the rifle one more time. Let him learn what these mountains do to men who hurt what's mine, because somewhere between that snowy night and this spring morning, Clara had become his, not property, never that, but his to protect, his to cherish, his to love, if they survived what was coming. The rider came on the 4th day, just as Owen had expected. Not Joseph Hartley himself. The man was too soft for mountain riding, but a hired guide named Simmons, who Owen recognized from town. Behind him rode 2 others, a deputy sheriff with a badge glinting in the morning sun, and Hartley himself, looking uncomfortable on horseback. Owen met them at the property line, rifle casual across his saddle. "Simmons, bit far from town, aren't you?" "Morning, McRae." Simmons had the grace to look uncomfortable. "These gentlemen hired me to guide them up here. Got business with you, they say." "State your business, then." Owen kept his eyes on Hartley, who was studying the cabin in the distance. The deputy cleared his throat. "Mr. Hartley here claims his wife ran off last winter. He's got reason to believe she might be in these parts. Man can claim anything he wants." Owen shifted slightly, the rifle movement not quite threatening but noticeable. "Doesn't make it true." Hartley finally spoke, his cultured voice out of place in the wilderness. "I have legal documentation, a marriage certificate, witnessed and filed in Topeka. My wife is troubled. She needs help, medical attention." Funny way of giving medical attention, putting bruises on a woman, Owen said quietly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Hartley's face flushed. "I don't know what lies she's told you. Nobody's told me anything, but I know the look of a man who uses his fists on those weaker than him." Owen's voice carried the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Seen it before. Don't much care for it. The deputy intervened. Now, Mr. McRae, we're here peaceful-like. If Mrs. Hartley is here, the law says she needs to come with us. If she's not, we'll be on our way. The lady staying at my place is my intended, Owen said. Posted the bands in Denver last month. Far as I'm concerned, that makes her mine to protect. It was a lie, but one that would be hard to disprove without a trip to Denver. Hartley's eyes narrowed. Her name. What's her name? Clara McRae. Soon enough. You're lying. Her name is Catherine Hartley, and she's my property. My wife. Owen's horse shifted as his hands tightened on the reins. Seems to me a man who can't keep track of his wife's name might not have much claim on her. I demand to see her, Hartley said, voice rising. I have rights. You're on my land. Owen's tone could have frozen flame. Only rights you have are the ones I give you, and right now, I'm giving you the right to turn around and ride back down this mountain. The deputy looked between them nervously. Mr. McRae, I've got a duty here. If we could just speak to the lady. Clear this up. A door slammed. All four men turned to see Clara walking toward them. Head high, wearing her best dress, the blue calico Owen had bought her. She moved with deliberate grace, but Owen saw the slight tremor in her hands. Clara, go back inside, he called. She ignored him, stopping just behind his horse. Hello, Joseph. Hartley's face transformed with triumph. Catherine, thank God. These men were just about to... My name is Clara. Her voice carried across the clearing, steady as mountain stone. Clara Whitlow, and you're trespassing. Don't be ridiculous. You're ill, darling. Not thinking clearly. Come home and we'll get you help. Clara laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Help? Is that what you call breaking my ribs? Throwing me downstairs? Killing our baby? The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Simmons looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, but Hartley just smiled, the expression cold. See? Delusions. She's been unstable since she lost the child. Makes up terrible stories. Show them the papers, Clara said quietly. The ones from Dr. Morrison. The ones that say I can't have children because of the damage. Hartley's composure cracked. You stole those papers. Stole money too. Theft is a crime. Catherine, so is attempted murder. Owen cut in. Which is what I'll claim if you don't get off my land in the next minute. The deputy held up a hand. Now, hold on. Ma'am, are you saying you don't want to go with your husband? He's not my husband, Clara said firmly. Whatever papers he has, whatever claims he makes, I reject them all. I choose to stay here. The law, the deputy began. The law fails women every day, Clara interrupted. But today, I have something better than law. I have a man willing to stand for me. That's enough. Owen dismounted slowly, moving to stand beside her. The message was clear. To get to Clara, they'd have to go through him, and the look in his eyes suggested that would be a fatal mistake. Hartley's face had gone purple. You can't just... She's mine. I paid her father good money. There's your problem, Owen said. You think you bought her, but people aren't property. Hartley. Even the law's starting to figure that out. I'll be back. Hartley snarled. With more men. With a federal marshal if I have to. You do that, Owen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. But you should know, these mountains are dangerous. Men go missing all the time. Fall off cliffs, get lost in storms, eaten by bears. He paused. Tragic. Really. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Even the deputy looked nervous now. Simmons was already turning his horse around. We should go, Simmons said. Storm coming in anyway. The deputy nodded slowly. Ma'am, you're sure about staying? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Clara said, Then I guess we're done here. The deputy tipped his hat. Mr. Hartley, I've done what the law requires. The lady's made her choice. Hartley looked between them all, rage and disbelief warring on his face. This isn't over? Yes, Clara said quietly. It is. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hartley yanked his horse around viciously and spurred it down the trail. The others followed, Simmons throwing an apologetic look over his shoulder. Owen and Clara stood watching until they disappeared into the trees. Only then did Clara's composure break. She swayed, and Owen caught her, pulling her against his chest. "You were magnificent," he murmured into her hair. I was terrified. She was shaking now, adrenaline fading. When I saw him, I thought, "Shh," Owen stroked her back. "He's gone. You're safe. He'll be back. He doesn't give up easily." "Neither do I." Owen pulled back to look at her. "What you said about me standing for you." Clara touched his face. "I meant it, every word." They were still standing there, holding each other, when the first drops of rain began to fall. Owen looked up at the darkening sky and smiled grimly. "Storm's coming early. Trail will be washed out by nightfall." "How unfortunate for anyone trying to travel," Clara said, catching his meaning. They made it inside just as the sky opened. Rain hammered the roof, turning the world beyond the windows into a gray blur. Owen barred the door and checked the windows, old habits returning. "He might try to come back tonight," Clara said, watching him. "Use the storm as cover. Let him try." Owen checked his rifle again. This cabin's weathered worse than Joseph Hartley. Clara moved to the stove, putting coffee on with hands that still shook slightly. "I should tell you everything. About the money, the papers I took." "Don't need to know." Owen came up behind her, hands settling on her shoulders. "Past is past. But if there's legal trouble, then we'll face it together." He turned her around. "Did you mean what you said out there? About choosing to stay?" "Yes." No hesitation, just certainty. "Did you mean what you said? About posting bans?" "No." At her flicker of hurt, he quickly continued. "But I would, if you wanted." Clara studied his face. "You'd marry me, even knowing what you know? Because of what I know." Owen cupped her face. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met. Brave, stubborn, kind even after everything you've been through." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And somewhere between that first night and now, I fell in love with you." Clara's breath hitched. "Owen, you don't have to say it back. Don't have to feel—" She silenced him with a kiss, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. When they parted, both breathing hard, she whispered, "I love you too. God help me, I do." Thunder crashed overhead, lightning illuminating the cabin in stark flashes. Owen pulled her closer, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. They came together like the storm itself, powerful, inevitable, washing away the careful boundaries they'd maintained. Clara's hands fumbled with his shirt buttons. "Are you sure?" she asked between kisses. "Once we do this, we've already done this," Owen said roughly, walking her backward toward his room. "Every meal shared, every quiet evening, every time you sang while mending my clothes. We've been making love for months. Clara, this is just the physical expression." She laughed, the sound turning to a gasp as he lifted her. "Such a romantic." "You want romance?" He laid her on the bed, following her down. "How's this? You're my sunrise after 3 years of darkness, my spring after endless winter, my—" "Owen?" Clara pulled him down for another kiss. "Less talking." He obliged, and for a while there was only the storm outside and the quieter storm within, two damaged souls finding healing in each other's arms. They moved together with desperate tenderness, mapping scars both seen and hidden, replacing old pain with new sensation. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the rain. Clara traced patterns on Owen's chest, marveling at the simple freedom of touching him. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now?" Owen pressed a kiss to her temple. "Now we make this real. Go to Denver, post those bans for true, get married proper." He paused. "If that's what you want. A real marriage." Clara tested the words. "Not bought or forced or arranged. Chosen." "Chosen," he agreed. "Though I should warn you, life up here isn't easy. Winters are hard. Town's far away. Not much society for a woman. Clara laughed. Owen McRae, are you trying to talk me out of marrying you? Just want you to know what you're choosing. She rolled on top of him, hair falling around them like a curtain. I'm choosing you. The cabin, the mountains, the isolation, all of it. I'm choosing the life we've already started building. Owen reached up, tucking her hair behind her ear. Then God help us both. He already has, Clara said, and kissed him again as thunder rolled across the mountains. Outside, the storm raged on. The trail would indeed be impassable by morning, just as Owen had predicted. If Joseph Hartley was fool enough to attempt it, the mountain would handle him more permanently than any court of law. But inside the cabin, there was warmth and love and the promise of tomorrow. Two broken people had found each other in the wilderness and discovered that sometimes the best families are the ones you choose. The storm would pass. Spring would continue its slow conquest of winter, and Clara and Owen would face whatever came next the way they'd learned to face everything. Together. The trip to Denver took 3 days, Owen watchful for any sign of Hartley or his men. But the trail remained empty save for the usual travelers, miners heading to claims, supply wagons, the occasional family seeking fortune in the growing city. Clara rode beside him, back straight, chin high, looking nothing like the desperate woman who'd collapsed at his door months ago. They took rooms at a respectable boarding house near the courthouse. The proprietress, Mrs. Elmwood, gave them a knowing look, but said nothing when Owen requested separate accommodations. We'll do this proper, he told Clara as they stood in the hallway between their rooms. I want no one questioning the validity when we're done. Clara smiled, touching his hand briefly. 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks, he agreed, though the wait might kill him. The next morning, they visited Judge Patterson's office. The elderly man reviewed their documents with careful attention, occasionally glancing at them over his spectacles. Says here you're from Kansas, Miss Whitlow. Yes, sir. Clara's voice remained steady. Born and raised in Lawrence. And you, Mr. McRae, will swear that Miss Whitlow is free to marry? No impediments you're aware of? Owen met the judge's gaze squarely. None whatsoever. Patterson studied them both, then nodded. Very well. I'll post the banns today. 3 weeks from now, assuming no objections are raised, you can be married. He paused meaningfully. You understand that if someone contests this union, provides proof of existing marriage? We understand, Clara said quietly. There will be no valid objections. They left the courthouse and Owen suggested visiting the mercantile. You'll need a proper wedding dress. Owen, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. He steered her toward the shop. You deserve something new, something that's never belonged to anyone else. They spent the morning selecting fabric, Clara protesting the expense while Owen insisted. The seamstress, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Chen, took Clara's measurements with professional efficiency. 3 weeks, you said. I can have it ready. Nothing too fancy. Clara said, something I can wear again. Mrs. Chen smiled. Practical. I like that. Leave it to me. That evening, they dined at the boarding house with the other guests. Clara charmed everyone with her quiet grace, while Owen found himself watching her with proprietary pride. She was blooming here, away from the shadow of fear that had haunted her. But the shadow returned the next morning when Owen spotted a familiar figure outside the bank, Hartley, talking with 2 rough-looking men. Owen steered Clara quickly in the opposite direction, but not before Hartley looked up and saw them. Keep walking, Owen murmured. Don't look back. They made it to the boarding house without incident, but Owen knew their peaceful interlude was over. That afternoon, while Clara rested, he paid a visit to an old friend, Marcus Webb, who'd served with him during a brief stint of militia duty years ago. Marcus now worked as a private investigator, handling delicate matters for Denver's growing wealthy class. I need information, Owen said without preamble, about a grain merchant from Topeka named Joseph Hartley. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That kind of information costs. I'm good for it. 2 days later, Marcus delivered. They met at a quiet saloon, away from the main thoroughfares. "Your Mr. Hartley is an interesting fellow," Marcus began, sliding a folder across the table. "Married 3 times. First wife died in childbirth. Neighbors said she was accident-prone, always sporting bruises. Second wife ran off 5 years ago. Never seen again. Third wife, Clara," Owen said grimly. "Catherine Hartley, according to the records. Married 2 years ago. No death certificate. No divorce filing." Marcus leaned back. "But here's where it gets interesting. I found the second wife." Owen looked up sharply. "Living in San Francisco under another name. She was willing to talk, for a price." Marcus tapped the folder. "Signed affidavit in there. Details what Hartley did to her. Why she ran. She's willing to testify if needed." "Why would she risk that?" "Because she heard he'd taken another wife. Felt guilty for not warning the girl." Marcus studied Owen. "This Clara must mean something to you." "She's everything," Owen said simply. "Then you should know. Hartley's been asking around. He knows about the bands. He's planning something." Owen took the folder, mind already working. "Thanks. Marcus, send me your bill." "Already did." Marcus stood to leave, then paused. "Be careful. Owen, men like Hartley don't like losing." Back at the boarding house, Owen found Clara in the parlor, helping Mrs. Elmwood with some mending. The domestic scene made his chest tight with protective fury. He waited until they were alone to share what he'd learned. Clara read through the affidavit, face paling. "This poor woman, living with that fear all these years. She's safe now, and you will be too." Owen took her hands. "We have proof he's a danger to women. If he tries anything, he will try." Clara's voice was certain. "He can't stand losing control." Owen pulled her close. "Let him try." The next week passed intense vigilance. Owen accompanied Clara everywhere, hand near his concealed revolver. They visited the seamstress for fittings, purchased supplies for the cabin, attended church to establish their respectability. All the while, Owen felt eyes on them, knew Hartley was watching, waiting. The confrontation came 5 days before the wedding. Clara had convinced Owen to let her visit the library alone, just across the street from where he waited at the barber's. She was emerging with an armload of books when Hartley appeared, blocking her path. Owen saw it through the window, was moving before Hartley even touched her, but he wasn't fast enough. Hartley grabbed Clara's arm, jerking her close, speaking rapidly. Clara tried to pull away, books scattering across the boardwalk. "Let her go!" Owen's voice cut through the street noise like a blade. Hartley turned, still gripping Clara. "This is between me and my wife." "Former wife," a new voice interjected. Judge Patterson stepped out of the barber shop, having witnessed the scene. "I received some interesting documents yesterday, Mr. Hartley, including testimony from your second wife, who's very much alive, despite what you told the authorities." Hartley's face went white. "That's impossible. Bigamy is a serious crime." Patterson continued. "As is assault." He gestured to where Hartley still held Clara's arm. "I suggest you release Miss Whitlow immediately." Hartley's grip tightened for a moment, rage flashing in his eyes. Then, slowly, he let go. Clara stumbled back, Owen catching her. "This isn't over." Hartley snarled. "Yes, it is." Patterson signaled, and 2 deputies emerged from nearby doorways. "Joseph Hartley, you're under arrest for bigamy and fraud. These men will escort you to jail pending trial." Hartley looked wildly between them all. "You planned this." "You planned this," Owen corrected. "The moment you decided to hunt down a woman who had the courage to leave you." He pulled Clara closer. "Your mistake was following her to my territory." The deputies led Hartley away, his protests fading into the crowd that had gathered. Judge Patterson approached Owen and Clara. "Miss Whitlow, are you hurt?" "No, sir." Clara's voice shook slightly. "Thank you for your intervention." "Thank Mr. McRae. He came to me with the evidence, asked me to be ready." Patterson smiled. I must say, I'll be pleased to perform your wedding. It's not often I see a man go to such lengths to protect his bride. 5 days later, Clara stood in their room at the boarding house, wearing her new dress, soft gray wool with blue ribbons. Practical but pretty. Mrs. Elmwood helped with her hair, pinning it up with small white flowers. "You're a lucky woman," the proprietress said. "That man of yours would move mountains for you." "He already has," Clara murmured. The ceremony was simple, held in Judge Patterson's office with Mrs. Elmwood and Marcus Webb as witnesses. Owen wore his best shirt, freshly shaved, looking uncomfortable but determined. When he saw Clara, his expression softened into something that made her heart skip. "Dearly beloved," Patterson began, then paused. "Actually, let's skip the formalities. Owen, do you take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." No hesitation. "Clara, do you take Owen to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." The words came out strong. "Certain. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I pronounce you husband and wife." Patterson smiled. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. McRae." Owen cupped Clara's face gently, as if she might break. "Hello, Mrs. McRae." "Hello, husband," she whispered back. And then they were kissing, sealing their chosen union with all the promise of their mountain future. The wedding dinner was modest but joyful, held at the boarding house with a few other guests. Clara laughed more than Owen had ever heard, glowing with a happiness that transformed her. When they finally retired to their room, together at last, Owen carried her over the threshold despite her protests. "I can walk." "Tradition," he said firmly, kicking the door shut behind them. "Besides, I've been wanting to do that for months." He set her down gently. Suddenly nervous. They'd been together before, but this was different. This was their wedding night, their true beginning. Clara seemed to understand. She reached up, unpinning her hair slowly, letting it fall around her shoulders. "We have all the time in the world now." "A lifetime," Owen agreed, moving closer. "Sure you won't regret it? Life on that mountain, just the two of us? 3 of us, hopefully." She blushed at his surprised look. "Not yet, but someday, if I can." Owen pulled her close, voice rough with emotion. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what marriage means." "Together," Clara repeated, and reached up to draw him down for a kiss. Outside, Denver bustled with evening activity, but inside their room, there was only them, 2 souls who'd found each other against all odds, choosing love over fear, trust over past pain. Tomorrow they'd return to their mountain, to the life they were building together. But tonight was theirs alone, the first night of their chosen forever, and somewhere in a jail cell. Joseph Hartley faced his own future, one decidedly less bright than the couple he'd tried to tear apart. The mountains had their own justice, and sometimes it looked like a determined man protecting what he loved. But Owen and Clara weren't thinking about justice or the past or even tomorrow. They were too busy writing their own story, one kiss, one touch, one promise at a time. The mail-order bride who wasn't had found her home, and the hermit who'd forgotten how to love had remembered why it was worth the risk. The news of Hartley's arrest spread through the mountain communities like wildfire. By the time Owen and Clara returned to their cabin, they found unexpected support from neighbors they barely knew existed. Mrs. Morrison from the valley brought preserves. Tom Bradley offered to help with the heavier farm work, and even cranky old Pete Williams stopped by with a wedding gift, a rocking chair he'd carved himself. "Heard you had some trouble," Pete said gruffly, avoiding eye contact. "Man's got a right to protect his family." Clara touched the smooth wood of the chair, tears threatening. "Thank you, Mr. Williams. It's beautiful." "Well," Pete shuffled his feet, "wife'll need something comfortable, especially when—" He gestured vaguely at her midsection, then fled before either could respond. Owen found Clara crying in the kitchen later, overwhelmed by the kindness. "Hey now," he said, pulling her close. What's this? I never expected. I thought we'd be alone up here. We are alone, Owen corrected gently. But we're not unwelcome. There's a difference. Spring deepened into summer, bringing wildflowers and longer days. Clara transformed their rough garden into something magical, coaxing vegetables from the rocky soil. Owen expanded the cabin, adding a proper bedroom and a larger kitchen. They worked side by side, building their life board by board. But by midsummer, Clara's energy began to flag. She tired easily, had to rest more often. Owen watched her with growing concern, especially when he caught her being sick behind the chicken coop one morning. "I'm taking you to town," he announced. "See Doc Morrison." "I'm fine," Clara protested weakly. "Just the heat. It's barely 70 degrees. She looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. "Owen, I think I might be—" Understanding dawned. Owen's legs went weak, and he had to sit down hard on the porch steps. "We're—" "I think so, but I'm scared." The words tumbled out. "What if I can't carry it? What if I lose this one, too?" Owen pulled her down beside him, cradling her against his chest. "Then we'll grieve together and try again. Or not try. Whatever you want. I want this baby," Clara whispered. "I want it so much it terrifies me." "Then we'll be terrified together." Doc Morrison confirmed their hopes and fears the next week. Clara was indeed pregnant, about 2 months along, but the old doctor's expression was grave as he completed his examination. "I won't lie to you folks. There's scarring from the previous loss. This won't be an easy pregnancy." "What does that mean?" Owen's hand tightened on Clara's. "It means Mrs. McRae needs to take things very easy. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity, plenty of rest." He looked at Clara seriously. "And you need to be prepared. There's a significant chance—" "I understand," Clara said quietly. "But I want to try." The ride home was silent, both lost in thought. That night, Owen held Clara as she cried, tears of joy and terror mixed together. He made his own promises to God, the mountains, any power that might listen. Keep her safe. Let her have this happiness. I'll give anything. The summer months became an exercise in careful hope. Owen took over all the heavy work, hiring Tom Bradley's eldest son to help. Clara protested being coddled, but Owen was immovable. "You're growing our child," he said firmly. "That's work enough." She adapted, finding ways to contribute without strain. She sewed tiny clothes, taught herself to knit, planned expansions for next year's garden. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, Owen's hand resting on her slowly growing belly. "Tell me a story," Clara would say, "about your childhood here." Owen would oblige, dredging up memories he'd buried. Teaching James to fish in the creek, no, before that. His own father teaching him. The year the snow came early and trapped them for 2 months. The time he'd found a bear cub and tried to keep it as a pet. "Your father must have been furious," Clara laughed. "Mother was worse. Chased me around the cabin with a wooden spoon." Owen smiled at the memory, said I'd lost what little sense God gave me. "Our child will probably be just as wild," Clara said, rubbing her belly. Mountain blood on both sides now. But as autumn approached, the pregnancy became more difficult. Clara could barely keep food down. Spent days too weak to leave bed. Doc Morrison made the trek up twice, looking graver each time. "She needs to be closer to help," he told Owen privately. "If something goes wrong up here, she won't leave." Owen said, "I've tried. Then you need to prepare for possibilities." Owen threw himself into preparations. He studied every medical text he could find, had Mrs. Morrison teach him about birthing. He stockpiled supplies, cleared multiple routes to town in case one was blocked, and he prayed, something he hadn't done since Sarah and James died. One evening in early October, Clara called him urgently. He found her standing in their bedroom, hand pressed to her belly, face white with fear. "Something's wrong," she gasped. "It hurts, and there's blood." Owen's world tilted. "No, not again. Not Clara," He lifted her, carried her to bed, trying to keep the panic from his voice. "I'm going for Doc Morrison." "Don't leave me! Clara, please!" She gripped his hand. "If I'm losing this baby, I need you here." Owen held her as the pains came in waves. She bit down on a leather strap to keep from screaming, her body fighting to expel what it couldn't sustain. Owen talked to her, sang to her, promised her impossible things if she'd just hold on. But by dawn, it was over. The tiny form, too small, too still, lay wrapped in one of the blankets Clara had sewn. She held it, held him, for a long time, tears flowing silently. "We should name him," she whispered. "He existed. He should have a name. What would you like?" "Thomas, after your father." She looked up at Owen. "Is that all right?" "It's perfect." They buried Thomas James McRae beneath the pine tree where Owen's family lay. Clara insisted on being there, though she could barely stand. As Owen filled in the tiny grave, she sang, the same lullaby she'd hummed that first night, but now it was a goodbye. The weeks that followed were the darkest since Clara's arrival. She retreated into herself, spending hours in the rocking chair Pete Williams had made, staring at nothing. Owen felt helpless, his own grief compounded by watching hers. "I failed again," she said one night. "My body failed." "You didn't fail." Owen knelt beside her chair. "The doctor said the damage was too severe." "This isn't your fault." "Joseph did this," Clara said bitterly. "Even from prison, he's still destroying my life." "No." Owen gripped her hands. "He damaged your body, but he doesn't get to destroy your life. We don't let him have that power." Slowly, painfully, they began to heal. Clara returned to her garden work, preparing for winter. Owen threw himself into improvements for the cabin. They didn't speak of trying again, the subject too raw, but their love deepened in shared sorrow. Then came the letter that changed everything. Marcus Webb wrote from Denver with news. Joseph Hartley had been convicted of bigamy and fraud. But more importantly, his second wife had provided information about hidden accounts, money Hartley had embezzled from business partners over the years. "There's a reward," Owen read aloud, "for information leading to the recovery of stolen funds. Says here she's entitled to a portion as his legal victim." Clara looked up sharply. "How much?" "Enough to make a difference. Maybe see specialists in San Francisco or back east. Doctors who might help us have a child," Clara finished. They looked at each other across the kitchen table, hope warring with fear of more disappointment. "It would mean leaving the mountain," Owen pointed out. "Maybe for months. But we'd come back. Always. This is our home." Clara stood, moving around the table to sit in his lap. "Then let's try one more time. If it doesn't work," she took a breath. "If it doesn't work, then we'll accept it. Build our life, just the two of us." "That would be enough," Owen said, meaning it. "You're enough, but a child would be wonderful," Clara added wistfully. "Yeah," Owen agreed, pulling her close. "It would." They began making plans that night. The reward money, combined with what Clara had taken when she fled, would be enough for travel and treatment. Mrs. Morrison knew of a doctor in San Francisco who specialized in difficult cases. It was a chance, just a chance, but more than they'd had before. As they prepared for bed, Clara paused by the window. The first snow was falling, gentle flakes that reminded her of that night nearly a year ago. "I knocked on your door in a blizzard," she mused, half frozen, telling lies about being a mail-order bride. "Best lie anyone ever told me," Owen said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you turned me away?" "Every day." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "And every day I thank God I didn't." Clara turned in his arms. "I love you, Owen McRae, whether we have children or not. Whether we stay on this mountain or travel the world. I love you. And I love you, Clara McRae, my unexpected bride." They stood together watching the snow fall, transforming their harsh landscape into something soft and new. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, travel plans, medical consultations, the eternal hope and fear of trying again. But tonight, they had each other. They had their mountain home and their hard-won peace. They had love that had survived abandonment and violence, loss and grief. And sometimes, Owen thought as Clara hummed her lullaby, sometimes that was miracle enough. The chair Pete Williams had carved sat empty by the fire, waiting. Whether it would rock a baby or just a dreaming couple growing old together remained to be seen. But either way, it would be filled with love. That much they could promise. Spring returned to the mountains slowly, as if matching Clara's cautious hope. The trip to San Francisco had been postponed through winter. Doc Morrison insisted she regain her strength first. Now, with wildflowers dotting the meadows, they prepared for the journey that might change everything. Clara stood in the garden she'd coaxed from rocky soil, memorizing each plant. Promise you'll have Tom's boy water the vegetables while we're gone. Already arranged. Owen assured her. Pete Williams will check the animals, and Mrs. Morrison has the house key in case we don't come back quickly. Clara finished the thought he wouldn't voice. They both knew this pregnancy, if it took, would mean months in San Francisco under medical care. The morning of departure. Clara walked through each room of the cabin, touching surfaces like talismans. Owen found her in what would have been the nursery, standing by the window he'd installed specially for morning light. Second thoughts? He asked gently. No, just remembering. She turned to him. This is where I pictured our children playing, where I saw our future. We'll still have that future, maybe just written different than we planned. They descended the mountain as they'd met, in uncertainty, but no longer alone. The journey to San Francisco took a week by rail, Clara growing quieter with each mile from home. Owen kept her spirits up with stories and plans, but he saw the fear she tried to hide. Doctor. Elizabeth Hartwell was nothing like they expected. Young for her expertise, with sharp eyes behind wire spectacles. She listened to their history with clinical detachment that somehow felt kind. I won't lie to you, she said after examining Clara. The scarring is significant, but I've seen worse cases carry to term with proper care. What kind of care? Owen leaned forward. Complete bed rest for most of the pregnancy, specialized treatments to strengthen the womb, constant monitoring. She looked between them. It means staying in San Francisco until after delivery, maybe 6 months, maybe 8. Clara's hand found Owen's. But there's a chance. They rented a small apartment near the hospital. Owen finding work at the docks to stretch their funds. Clara followed Dr. Hartwell's instructions religiously. Special foods, prescribed exercises, herbs that made her grimace but which she swallowed faithfully. 2 months passed before they dared hope. Clara woke one morning with familiar nausea. And Dr. Hartwell confirmed what they barely dared believe. You're pregnant? About 6 weeks along? Clara burst into tears, Owen holding her as she shook. Even Dr. Hartwell's stern reminder about staying calm couldn't dim their joy. But joy gave way to anxiety as the weeks passed. Every twinge sent Clara into panic. Owen slept on the floor beside their bed, waking whenever she stirred. Dr. Hartwell visited twice weekly, monitoring every change. The baby's growing well, she announced at 3 months. Heartbeat is strong. But? Clara sensed hesitation. But you're showing signs of early strain. We need to begin complete bed rest now. Clara looked at Owen despairingly. 3 more months of lying still, depending on him for everything. I'll go mad. No, you won't. Owen squeezed her hand. I'll read to you. Tell you stories. We'll plan the biggest garden you've ever seen for when we get home. And he did. Every evening after work, Owen brought the world to Clara's bedside. Newspapers, novels, sketches of garden plans. He described the city streets, the ships in the harbor, the mountains he could see on clear days that reminded him of home. Clara learned to find peace in stillness, hand resting on her growing belly. He's strong, she'd say. I can feel it. This one's a fighter. like his mother. Owen always replied, but at 5 months, the strain began to show. Clara's body struggled with the burden, and Dr. Hartwell's visits became daily. "We may need to deliver early," she warned. "The new procedures make it possible for babies to survive at 7 months, sometimes even earlier." "How early?" Owen's voice was rough. "Let's hope we don't find out." Clara held on with fierce determination. When movement became painful, she gritted her teeth. When fear overwhelmed her, she sang lullabies to her belly. Owen matched her strength with his own, taking on nursing duties without complaint. Tom Bradley wrote with updates from home, the garden thriving, the animals well, the cabin waiting. Clara had Owen read the letters repeatedly, drawing strength from the promise of return. At 6.5 months, crisis struck. Clara woke in agony, body trying to expel what it could barely contain. "Doctor!" Hartwell arrived within minutes, her usual calm cracking. "We need to get her to the hospital, now!" The next hours blurred together, Clara fighting to hold on, Owen praying as he hadn't since losing his first family. "Doctor!" Hartwell working with grim efficiency. They managed to stop the early labor, but Clara remained hospitalized. "Every day we can delay increases the baby's chances." "Doctor," Hartwell explained, "we'll try for 2 more weeks." 2 weeks became 3, then 4. Clara, confined to a hospital bed, grew thin everywhere but her belly. Owen practically lived at the hospital, reading to her, talking to her, and to their unborn child. "Your mother's the strongest woman in the world," he'd tell her belly. "And you're going to be just as strong, but maybe you could help her out a little, stay put just a bit longer." At 7 months and 2 weeks, Clara's body could wait no longer. Labor came fast and hard, her weakened state making it dangerous. Owen was banished from the delivery room despite his protests, left to pace the hallway like countless fathers before him. The baby's cry, when it finally came, was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Weak but insistent, demanding attention. Owen's legs gave out, and he sank onto a bench, sobbing. "Doctor." Hartwell emerged hours later, exhausted but smiling. "You have a daughter. She's small but breathing on her own. A fighter, like you said. Clara? Resting. She lost a lot of blood, but she'll recover." The doctor's expression softened. "She's asking for you." Owen found Clara pale as the hospital sheets but radiant. In her arms lay the tiniest human he'd ever seen, red and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair. "Meet your daughter," Clara whispered. Owen approached like a man in a dream, afraid to breathe too hard. The baby opened her eyes, Clara's eyes, and studied him solemnly. "Hello, little one," he managed. "I'm your papa. She needs a name." Clara said, "I thought, Sarah Elizabeth, for your first wife and doctor. Hartwell?" Owen's throat closed. "You do that. She gave you love first. I want to honor that." Clara touched the baby's cheek. "Is it all right?" "It's perfect. Sarah Elizabeth McRae." They kept vigil over tiny Sarah for weeks. She gained weight slowly, each ounce a victory. Clara recovered gradually, milk coming in despite fears it wouldn't. The apartment became a second nursery, Owen learning to change diapers and swaddle with surprising skill. "Who'd have thought?" Clara mused one evening, watching him rock Sarah. "That the mountain hermit would be so good with babies? She's easy to love." Owen said simply, "Doctor." Hartwell finally declared them fit to travel when Sarah reached 2 months old. "She's still small, but strong. Mountain air might do her good." The journey home took longer, frequent stops to nurse and rest. But as they climbed into the mountains, both parents seemed to gain strength. Sarah, who'd been fretful in the city, calmed as the air grew thinner and cleaner. Pete Williams met them at the trail junction, his weathered face breaking into an unprecedented smile. "Heard you were coming. Brought the wagon." The cabin appeared around the final bend like a promise kept. Smoke rose from the chimney. Mrs. Morrison had come to air things out and start a fire. The garden showed signs of careful tending, vegetables ready for harvest. Owen helped Clara down, then retrieved Sarah from her basket. Together, they stood before their home, complete in a way it had never been. "Welcome home, Sarah Elizabeth," Clara said softly. "This is where you'll grow strong." That evening, they sat in Pete Williams's rocking chair, Sarah nursing contentedly. The mountains stretched endlessly beyond their window, painted gold by setting sun. Owen wrapped his arms around both his girls, still hardly believing they were real. "Was it worth it?" Clara asked. "All those months away, all that fear?" Owen looked down at Sarah's perfect face, then at Clara's tired but joyful expression. "I'd do it 1,000 times over." A knock at the door interrupted them. Neighbors bearing food, gifts, and congratulations. The cabin filled with laughter and admiration for tiny Sarah, who slept through it all. Later, after everyone left, Owen found Clara standing by the window where she'd kept vigil that first night. "Remembering?" he asked, "thinking how different it all is. Then I was running from a life that was killing me. Now—" She turned, Sarah cradled against her chest. "Now I'm living a life I never dared dream of." "No more running," Owen promised. "For any of us." Clara smiled, lifting her face for his kiss. "No more running. We're home." Outside, night settled over the mountains like a benediction. Inside, a fire crackled, a baby slept, and two souls who'd saved each other settled in for their first night as a complete family. The mail-order bride who wasn't had found her place, and the hermit had discovered that some risks were worth everything. In the corner, the rocking chair creaked gently, finally fulfilling its purpose. And somewhere in the walls of that mountain cabin, hope put down roots as strong as the ancient pines, ready to weather whatever storms might come. The first winter with Sarah tested them in ways they hadn't anticipated. She was colicky, crying through the nights while blizzards raged outside. Owen walked endless circles around the cabin, Sarah against his shoulder, while Clara dozed fitfully between feedings. "She knows we're new at this," Clara said one exhausted morning, dark circles under her eyes, taking advantage. But even through the exhaustion, joy pervaded. Sarah's first smile, gas. Owen insisted, until she did it again, looking right at him, her tiny fingers gripping his rough one, the way she settled instantly when Clara sang the old lullaby. By spring, Sarah had grown round and rosy. The mountain air seemed to strengthen her as Dr. Hartwell had predicted. She watched everything with solemn eyes, rarely crying now except when hungry. "She's studying us," Owen said, making faces that finally earned a giggle. "Planning something." Clara laughed, kneading bread while Sarah played with wooden blocks Owen had carved. "Planning to wrap you even tighter around her finger." It was true. The man who'd once lived for solitude now rushed through chores to return to his daughter. He carried her everywhere, to feed chickens, check trap lines, even attempting to explain mountain tracking to someone more interested in chewing her fist. The community embraced them fully now. Mrs. Morrison visited weekly with advice and gossip. Tom Bradley's wife taught Clara to preserve foods for winter. Even Pete Williams carved toys, grumbling about soft wood while presenting intricately detailed animals. But their happiness drew shadows too. Word came that Joseph Hartley had been released from prison, though banned from Colorado territory. Clara's hands trembled reading the letter, but Owen's presence steadied her. "He can't hurt us," Owen said firmly. "Not anymore." Summer brought unexpected visitors. A wagon struggled up the trail, carrying a well-dressed couple. The woman emerged first, and Clara gasped. "Margaret?" Her sister flew into her arms, both women crying. Behind her, an uncomfortable-looking man in city clothes surveyed the wilderness with dismay. "This is my husband, Charles Whitlow," Margaret explained. "We've been searching for you since you left." Inside, over coffee and Clara's famous biscuits, the story emerged. Margaret had married well. Charles owned several shops in Chicago. When she'd learned of Clara's flight, she'd been frantic. "Father told us you died," Margaret said bitterly. "Only when that awful man came looking did we learn the truth. He gave me to Joseph," Clara said quietly. "Sold me like livestock. Margaret gripped her hand. I know, I'm sorry. If I'd known. You were already married. What could you have done? Charles cleared his throat. We've come to make amends, to offer you a place with us in Chicago. Proper society. Education for your daughter. This is our home, Owen interrupted, voice hard. I can see that, Charles said, looking around the simple cabin. But surely you want better for your child. Culture, opportunity. She has everything she needs. Clara said firmly. Love, family, clean air, and honest work. What more could we want? Margaret looked between them, understanding dawning. You're happy here, happier than I ever dreamed possible. They stayed 3 days, Margaret helping with Sarah while the men maintained polite distance. Charles never quite understood the appeal of mountain life, but Margaret saw it. The peace in Clara's face, the way Owen looked at his family, Sarah's robust health. She's beautiful, Margaret said, holding her niece. Looks just like you at that age. With her father's stubborn streak, Clara added fondly. When they left, Margaret pressed a packet into Clara's hands. From Mother. She never agreed with what Father did. She wanted you to have this, your grandmother's jewelry. For Sarah, someday. Clara hugged her sister fiercely. Visit again. You'll always be welcome. Next summer, Margaret promised. Charles needs time to recover from this adventure. Autumn painted the mountains gold and crimson. Sarah learned to crawl, then immediately tried climbing everything. Owen baby-proofed the cabin while Clara laughed at his increasingly creative solutions. She's going to be a handful, Mrs. Morrison observed, watching Sarah attempt to scale a chair. Already is, Clara agreed proudly. One evening, Owen returned from town with a letter that made him pause. Clara, nursing Sarah by the fire, looked up concerned. What is it? Joseph Hartley is dead. He sat heavily. Train accident in Kansas. Says here he was drunk. Fell off the platform. Clara absorbed this slowly. The man who'd terrorized her, who'd haunted her dreams, was gone. She waited for relief, for joy, for something. Instead, she felt only a distant pity. I hope he found peace, she said finally. Owen stared. After everything he did? Holding on to hate hurts us, not him. Clara shifted Sarah to her other side. We have too much love in our lives to waste energy on hate. That night, Owen held her extra close. You're remarkable. You know that? I'm practical, Clara corrected. And tired. Your daughter is teething. As if on cue, Sarah wailed from her crib. Owen rose to get her, bringing her to their bed where she settled between them, finally peaceful. We spoil her. Clara murmured. Good. Owen replied. Winter returned with vengeance, but this year they were ready. The cabin stayed warm, food stores held, and Sarah's laughter filled the short days. She took her first steps on Christmas Eve, toddling between her parents while snow fell softly outside. Did you see that? Clara gasped. Owen. She walked. He scooped Sarah up, tossing her gently while she squealed with delight. Of course she did. McRae women are unstoppable. They celebrated quietly. Small gifts. Clara's special dinner. Sarah babbling at her new cloth doll. After she slept, her parents sat by the fire, content in shared silence. I never thanked you, Clara said suddenly. For what? For opening your door that night, for letting me stay, for fighting for me. She turned to face him. For loving me when I didn't think I deserved it. Clara, let me finish. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. And then you gave me this. She gestured at their home, their sleeping child, their life together. How do I thank you for that? Owen pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. You thank me by being happy, by singing in our kitchen and planting impossible gardens, by raising our daughter to be as strong as her mother. Our daughter, Clara repeated wonderingly. Sometimes I still can't believe she's real. Believe it. Owen kissed her softly, though I'm thinking she needs a brother or sister. Clara laughed, swatting his shoulder. Let me survive the first one. but her eyes sparkled with possibility. Dr. Hartwell had said more children might be possible. With care, and here in their mountain sanctuary, anything seemed possible. Spring arrived again, and with it, Sarah's second birthday. The celebration brought neighbors from miles around, the cabin overflowing with warmth and laughter. Sarah, in a dress Margaret had sent, toddle ran between guests, charming everyone. Clara stood in the doorway, watching Owen chase their giggling daughter through the yard. Pete Williams called advice from his chair. Tom Bradley's children joined the game, and Mrs. Morrison distributed cake with military efficiency. "You did good, child," a voice said beside her. Clara turned to find old Pete's wife, rarely seen at gatherings. The elderly woman studied her with knowing eyes. "Wasn't sure about you at first," she continued. "City girl, running from something. Thought you'd bring trouble to that boy." "I did bring trouble," Clara admitted. "No." The woman patted her arm. "You brought him back to life. We watched him dying up here alone. Now look at him." They watched Owen scoop up Sarah, spinning her while she shrieked with joy. His face showed only happiness. The shadows of old grief transformed into laugh lines. "Thank you," Clara said softly. "Thank yourself. Takes courage to grab happiness when it finds you." The old woman smiled. "Not everyone's brave enough to stay." As evening fell and guests departed, Clara and Owen cleaned up together while Sarah played with her birthday treasures. The cabin felt full, not just of things, but of life, love, and possibility. "Happy?" Owen asked, pulling Clara close. "Perfect," she replied. They stood together in their doorway, watching sunset paint their mountains gold. Sarah toddled over, demanding to be lifted, and Owen obliged, settling her on his hip. "Story?" Sarah demanded, her new favorite word. "Once upon a time." Clara began. "A brave girl knocked on a stranger's door in a storm, and the stranger let her in." Owen continued, even though he thought he wanted to be alone. "And they saved each other." Clara finished. "The end." "No," Sarah protested. "More. Tomorrow, little one." Owen promised. The story's not over yet, and it wasn't. There would be more children, 2 sons who'd inherit their father's steadiness and their mother's courage. There would be years of gardens and storms, laughter and tears, ordinary days that built an extraordinary life. But that night, they had everything, each other, their daughter, their mountain home. The mail-order bride who wasn't had found where she belonged, and the hermit had learned that some doors, once opened, lead to unexpected grace. In the corner, Pete Williams's rocking chair creaked gently in the evening breeze, a testament to community, hope, and the courage to knock on a stranger's door in a storm. Sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, they choose you back. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this journey through the mountains of Colorado and the landscape of 2 hearts finding home in each other. If you're listening to this story, we'd love to know where in the world you are. Leave a comment and let's connect across the miles, just as Clara and Owen connected across their differences. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales of courage, love, and adventure in the American frontier. Share your thoughts about Clara and Owen's story below. Did it touch your heart as it touched ours? Until next time, partners, keep your fires burning and your hearts open to unexpected knocks at the door.